What's the subjects today?
What's your shtick, Scott? You got to put it out there so we can get it kicked off.
Oh yeah, Eric, take us.
What's up, guys? Scale Mastermind. What are we doing? We're trying to get your business to the next level. It's where you set the goal for where you want to go and use us to help get you where you need to go. What you're looking at here is a group of guys that are ready to help facilitate conversation for the up and coming topics in our real estate market. We've got anything from mortgage to agents to broker owners to team owners. We've got you covered. So as we go through these topics, we hope to get you to where you want to go. Guys, there's a couple of things on my horizon, but does anybody have any pressing topics today?
No, take the floor. What do you got?
All right. So I went to my team yesterday and I said, let's talk about this whole Department of Justice lawsuit buyer representation thing. And we went through and just brainstormed in preparation for eLab. That's what I'm really doing, right? I'm trying to figure out what it looks like to be innovative ahead of the game. And we got an email this week from an unknown source that said, y'all need to really pay attention to your marketing, your training, your value add to you as a buyer's agent. If that's who you have in your team, and if you have people that are helping you get buyers under control, you need to be aware of all the things that brings value to these people, because you're going to have to figure out a way to ask them how you're going to get compensated, right? I think we're all aware of the lawsuits that are going in, and potentially it's not finalized, but we've been told recently by a higher source that you guys need to at least prepare for this to happen. Has anybody here experienced any conversation about this at all in their business as of late?
So we talk about it. I bring it up maybe once every other week. I went through this year and created a buyer loyalty agreement that looks good, sounds good, passed our legal department. And it makes sense when you read it. If you didn't know anything about real estate and you're ready, like, yeah, this makes sense. How people get compensated, where the money comes from, and all of that stuff. The interesting part is the percentage of agent adoption, right? Because we're in a California, like buyer broker agreements, forget it in California, like it doesn't mean anything. But I'm prepping my team like, hey guys, I don't want to be caught with their pants down if and when this happens. So I would start getting prepared for it. And I've been saying that now for 6 months. And I would say the percentage of agent adoption on our team is about 15% of agents who are even willing to consider having the conversation of a buyer broker, buyer loyalty agreement. That's my concern.
That's exactly where we went. And then it transitioned, and I'll go back to your topic. Think about this. What are the workarounds to asking these buyers for money to pay for my services? One of the suggested topics was, let's add it to the price and seller concessions to somehow compensate for that. You know what that does? It wipes away every VA buyer that you've got on the planet. They're not allowed to pay for that service. So now VA loans are at risk not being accepted because there is no buyer representation. Or the VA has to change their rules to accommodate to what we're dealing with right now for the present day stuff. These are things that I hadn't thought about until yesterday. And the agents are simply saying, I don't know how to have that conversation because my people can't afford a house to buy now, much less asking them for compensation. So the first thing that they thought of was discounting what they do, which is inverse to what I told them. I said, your value is worth 4%, not 3%.
Well, I think there's a couple of things. I mean, I'd like to hear Todd speak on, well, we have him specifically. I'd like to hear him talk on, do we think mortgages, like lending institutions, or the rules are going to change to where buyers can finance commission? That would be one part, just add it on, just like points to a deal. I'd be curious to hear what your thoughts are on that. But I'm interested with this to almost like add a subtopic to it, is the different models that'll come up out of it.
Lots of models.
Yeah, I mean, I think you're going to see attorney type models. I think you're going to see the traditional 2.5%, 3% models. I think you're going to see a lot of different things come out of this where, I think it'll be good for the industry, probably in an innovation standpoint. But Todd, what are your thoughts on if banks are going to allow buyers to finance commission?
Oh, I think Eric kind of nailed it, right? I mean, it's a huge problem for VA. That one stands out, at the highest level. And then I think also, I think that, again, you got to look at the agencies, right? I mean, Fannie, Freddie are government run agencies, right? FHA, right? HUD. And so, even if at some point they finally say, you know what, we've got to do this in order to save the housing market, the time frame it's going to take to do that, it's not going to be short, and you're going to have this period that could be, months or years or never, that it gets resolved, where you've got to figure out how to come up with additional funds for your buyer. Yeah, you could definitely for non-VA loans have it built in to the seller credit, which ultimately kind of puts it on the same level field it's on now. It's just kind of done differently. The challenge there is that let's pretend you ask for a 3% credit towards the buyer's costs, and assuming that they allow the additional fee to the realtor, the realtor's commission, to be an allowable buyer's cost. I don't see that they wouldn't. But then you've got the 5% down conventional buyer, 10% down conventional buyer, who needs that 3% to actually cover the closing cost portion of their closing costs, or a 2-1 buy down, or whatever they need it for. They won't be able to go beyond that, right? You've got limitations to the amount of closing cost credit you can receive. So I can tell you that, I obviously run in some big circles, and they're not thinking about this at all. So the fact that we're having this discussion here means that I'm going to continue this discussion in the mortgage world to get their feedback on it. But I do believe mortgage world's not ready for it.
Well, that's terrifying. I thought I could scare a group. What the fuck, dude? You're usually the optimist. Because we've been having some conversations about it, right? And my concerns are we'll see. Let's talk about some of the models, right? So we're going to have agents that'll charge. I'll charge you $35 to open each door, and then I'll write the contract for $1,000. Now, if you want me to help you coordinate this, it'll be a buffet for people to select from, and a colossal cluster of all the problems when that happens. Then there'll be the model where brokerages or model like Commission Express will come in, and they'll say, hey, we will finance the buyer's commission for you and run it as a second against the house. And you'll pay us, we'll factor it out. And then they'll make money off of the consumer, right? We'll finance your $15,000 commission at X amount and put it on as a second. And then they will turn around and tell the agents, we will pay you over 3 years, or we'll discount that 15,000 down to 10 if you want it all up front. Right. I know the guy that started Commission Express, and smart guy, a good guy. But if you sat down at the table with him, he's going to eat your dinner. He was just smart. Then we're going to have brokers who are going to be put in that same position. I think that there's a lot of different models that are going to come out of it. Did I miss one of them, Christian? Because I'm sure I missed one.
Yeah, I mean, you mentioned a per door. I think one that I would really like the idea of, especially for a good salesperson, is a consultation model, right? Like an attorney, like maybe your first hour or whatever is the first conversation might be free, but then you got to book a buyer's consultation, God forbid, and pay for it. I don't know, if you told me I could sit on Zoom all day and just do buyer's consultations for several hundred a pop. That's not the worst thing in the world. That's what attorneys do, is they work for $300 to $500 an hour. And if you had eight of those a day, you'd probably make a decent living. And then you could have admin staff showing the actual properties and with a la carte services. I see a lot of like attorney style models. I think there will be the traditional agents that say, hey, I'm 2.5% to work with, and those agents will have to be worth it. I think you'll have different people that just want to focus on different stuff.
Well, will consumers go straight to real estate attorneys at that point?
God, I hope not.
Well, I mean, if you look at a real estate attorney, attorneys are really good at fucking deals up, and just making everything complicated, versus a real estate agent, a good real estate agent. The job is to make a deal, right, and make it fair and protect all parties, right? An attorney's job is to collect as many billable hours as possible.
Yeah.
While doing that.
I've never met an attorney in a real estate transaction that didn't make the transaction about him or her. And not to say that we as agents don't do that, but holy cow, what a way to kill a deal. Like, I've got to change this contract because I have to value myself. The other problems that we're going to see, right, is going back to what Todd said, is we're going to wrap the buyer's commission up in the transaction. I can't wait to watch an appraiser go, no, this house is 265, not 280. We can't just tack on 15,000 because an agent wants to get paid. I
mean, in that same conversation, like, that's already how it works. Like,
it is, but appraisers are going to love the opportunity, right? Because the contract's going to be written at the purchase price of the house. Then there'll be an addendum for additional compensation.
How many of us in this room have intermediaries as an option?
You have to define that. I don't know.
Dual agency.
We do.
Yeah.
Okay.
Oh, yeah.
We do too.
We do, yeah.
Billy does. Okay. Here's the deal. Think about this as a seller is now at 3%, not 6%, and that's how we're pricing the house.
Yeah.
Our market temporarily is built off of a 6% commission structure for the pricing of the house.
Yeah.
When we go to list it at 3%, the buyer is going to go straight to the seller or the seller's agent and say, intermediary.
Which is how this whole problem started in New York.
Bam. That's it.
Always
That's
in New
exactly where
Yorkers that screw it up for the rest of us.
So it wasn't Philly?
No, it was Yankee fans. Guaranteed it was a Yankee fan. But the reality is, in all seriousness, this reverberates through the entire industry, because as an agent, why would I buy a lead from Realtor.com for a buyer that I have to convince to pay me on top of it? So now I'm paying Realtor.com for the lead that I have to convince to pay me, that I have to get the appraiser to wrap it into the loan, get the lender to underwriters, right? Underwriters, the bane of existence, to approve that. That's 7 people determining that nightmare.
Yeah, while you have another for Realtor.com, there's 3 other agents calling and saying,
Right.
I'll do it for less, I'll do it for less, I'll do it for less.
Yeah, I'll do it for $1,000. You don't have to even worry about getting it financed. Todd, you have your earbuds in, right? Tara, T can't hear me talking bad about attorneys.
She's on the phone in front of me. We're just walking the dogs real quick before we go. But it's interesting too, because what you just said, Eric, is all of a sudden a seller only has to pay 3% instead of 6%. If you think about that, there's a 3% inequity in the house price at that moment.
Yeah.
Right. And so that inequity goes somewhere. Either now all of a sudden everyone who's selling a house is making 3% more, or house values come down 3%.
That's it. And on the interim for the next 5 years, we've got to deal with, is it 6 or is it 3 that we're comping against? And the buyers are going to go, screw that. I'm going to go straight to the selling agent and just get the price for 3% less.
Well, I also think if you surveyed home buyers, I would guess maybe 5 to 10% of them understand how real estate agents are compensated.
Truth, bro.
So I don't think it changes anything in a buyer's mind. right? Like when I get down to a buyer's consultation, I've already met with the person probably twice. And this is, you know, I consider myself a good agent that explains how things work. When I ask, hey, how do you understand how real estate agents get paid? I have no idea. I've been meaning to ask you that. Right. And like, you have to explain how it works. So like, I don't think it'll change the buyer's mind. A buyer's not all of a sudden going to be like, yeah, every house is 3% less now. We'll just offer 3% off. You know, like I certainly don't think sellers are going to be like, oh, well, just because I don't have to pay that commission, I'll just lower the price of my house. Like that's not how anybody thinks.
If I was a betting man, there's probably going to be a website out there that supports Texas buying or buyers that shows them how there are 33 to 42 outs on a contract, and they can pay for one-time service of how to get a house and be protected.
How to blame the agent that you paid $1,000 for, right?
Wait, say that again. Like, what do you mean by that?
The website that says call us, will tell you how to get out of the contract. The first one is going to be, who is the agent that wrote the offer and how much did you pay them?
It doesn't have to be a promulgated form, though.
I think Eric was saying before a buyer goes out shopping,
Oh,
you can go on
okay.
a site and look at how to structure it.
Like they're going to be exactly, Sean. They're going to be educated for what Christian is talking about at more than 5%. Now, there's 70% of the population will never see that site. Correct. But there will be a self-education skill set phase for the buyers, because honestly, how many crappy buyer's agents do we know out there? They're not providing value to people right now.
Yeah, I personally think this is not going to be a bad thing at all. I think it's going to be great for us. It's going to suck for people who are very transactional driven. I get that. But now it just means that there just needs to be more transparency on the values and the services you offer. And you got to remember, guys, I think that we help people make decisions, right? We're not selling on something. That's what we're doing. We're advising them. And I also do think that if for some reason now we're getting listing at 3% and removing the buyer side, it also opens the opportunity to charge more than 2.5% or 3%. Now you can go get buyer agency agreements where you offer at 4%, 5%, 10%. There are buyers out there that see the value of what you're bringing that are willing to pay a bigger commission, right? And it becomes like, how good are you to communicate the value that you bring to that party? And instead of just focusing on the transaction, you're focusing on the relationship with the people while still maintaining that client's best interest and goals, the center of helping them make that decision.
Well, to your point, Eli, why do sellers need an agent?
So I think that for a lot of reasons, right? The sellers need an agent. Was that?
It's the same thing, right? They could put it on Zillow. They could go market it. They could get traffic.
So that's what I'm saying. That's why I think there are going to be buyers out there that are going to say, like, you know what, I can go and hire a lawyer. And they can't today, right? I found the house. Here's a lawyer, $1,500. Just walk me through the contract or whatever. They can still do that, right? If in a lot of states, but why don't they do it? I think that this is more than just, help me put a transaction, facilitate a transaction, what agents bring to the table. And if it's you, I think that you're in trouble, because now if this comes into effect, a lot more companies, a lot of smart brokers, agents, and brands out there are going to start, saying like, this is what we offer, and people are going to pay more attention to it. There may be like, $40 a pop per house, but I think that those agents are not going to get the transaction. They're still going to go to an Eli or an Eric and it's like, hey, I want you to represent me there, right? And I think that's for me. I think it's going to be a good thing. In my opinion, right now, if it's going to be a disruption, I think that it's going to help a lot of the people or teams or brokerages who are, doing a good job, and they're only going to benefit from it.
Okay, so let me push on you just a little bit, Eli. 100% an opportunity for everybody in the mindset that we have right now. Here's the difference from what you're talking about, comparing why do we need sellers because sellers pay their commissions out of equity. Buyers do not have that opportunity. Buyers have to come out of pocket the money. I'll give you an example. In New Zealand, when you go to buy a house, you put money up front in a earnest account as a buyer. A buyer has to put in, let's say, 5% of the purchase price that they're qualified for in an account at the title company. And then if the buyer's agent provides services, they get paid out of that earnest money up, like it's theirs at that point based on a contract. So my guess is that in America, if we're going to go down this path, the people that have money, yes, we have an opportunity to make a 3.5–4% off our services for those people. They have a lot at stake for the house they're going to purchase. But for the people at 200 and 300 that I see, not a chance. They don't qualify for a loan now, much less anything more than 3.5% on an FHA.
Yeah, I don't think that we're going to go from, you know, where we are today to having buyers escrowing 5% of the total budget into, you know, I don't think we're going to see that. I do think that, you know, we're probably going to start getting those buyer agency agreements and paying attention to those. Like Christian mentioned, in California, they don't mean anything for it. It's just like more about, am I building trust and rapport with this person? At some point, we will need to start, you know, having those, and you know, and not let it just be a piece of paper that they sign, right? It has something that we may have to enforce, but that means that you actually need to live up to what you're saying you're going to do as an agent or organization. And there are going to be buyers out there, they're going to say like, you know, sure, I can go and pay a fee of X amount per house or a flat fee for a contract, but I have an agent that, you know, is if they're promising this that they're going to do for me. There's their duties, they're my interests and my goals. And guess what? They're only going to get paid when I make a decision, when I buy a property, right? That's it. So if they go and buy a property somewhere else and you have a buyer agency agreement, like I think you're going to see people enforcing those, right? I see you're going to have more cases where either the buyer or the consumer can say like, hey, my agent did not deliver what they say they're going to do. So like that could be different conversations, but I do see that, you know, those agreements, those relationship mean they're going to start to mean a lot more. And as Scott's point, it's like, all right, now not only are you going to pay for a lead, right? For a prospect, it's like, all right, I have to make sure that I'm building enough rapport, I'm building enough trust with a consumer, with this prospect, right? So this way, you know, my service and what I'm offering to them, they're value them, and they're going to willingly pay that 2–3%, whatever it's going to be, right, in each state. And I do think that we're going to find a way, right, because this is it's a big thing, real estate, home ownership in the United States, where it's going to be a way that in the lending institution, buyers are going to, or where it's not going to be a thing where like, oh, I can't get a VA loan because I can't pay you for my services, right? There's going to have to be something they're going to have to put in place in order for it to work, right? I just don't see it where we're going to put a new legislation in place and like, all right, guys, you deal with it, you scramble. And I think that's why, in my opinion, it's going to be more a clarity and transparency where people are going to be aware of what the agent's making, right? And what are they offering for the services? And I think there's going to be more of that, and consumers are going to be smarter, in my opinion. And they're going to want to choose, they're going to be choosing carefully which agency or brokerage or team, whatever it is going to represent them. Period. That's why I see it as an opportunity. Like if it becomes like, hey, you can go and negotiate your own, and we can, by the way, but most people don't do it because they're so used to like, this is the norm, right? This is what we need to do, right? Because we're so focused about, you know, the transaction part, and then we are actually elevating the service that we provide to our consumers, right? Because the business is so good, we're creating so many transactions, right? No one was paying attention, but that's going to change. I think it may change now, it's going to change in the future. I think people are just going to be more educated about like what they're going to be able to get out there. And you're going to see agencies offering more complementary services other than, hey, let me get you in the door to look at this. Let me write a contract for you. I think there's going to be more to it. It could even be that you have an attorney on payroll, right? That's there to guide your clients, whatever it is. I think that it's just going to allow better organization just flourish in those times, and that's why I'm excited about it. If anything, it's going to happen.
We've talked about this in my meetings, and it's essentially like when you're going on a listing now, how many agents does the seller interview? 3, 4, 5. It's going to be the same thing with a buyer's agent. It's going to be the exact same process. What's your track record? What are you going to do for me? And it's going to be that relationship building, that value that you bring to the table, and that's who they're going to choose. It's going to be very similar to that model. So the buyers just chose, or I shouldn't say chose, they worked with whoever showed up at the door to let them in the house they wanted to see and they could relate with. Where now, when they realize that the money they're going to have to pay, like, okay, hold on, I need to get somebody who's got my back and knows what they're doing.
I want the best. I want the best, right? I don't want whoever's first available that's going to get me in the house, right? And you know what? Yeah, they're okay. And then you get comfortable with them, right? You start seeing like 2, 3, 4 houses. Now that you get comfortable, and then you stick it out, right? Because they're helping you with the offer. But instead, I think it's going to be agents have to pay more attention to the consultation, right? To that in the beginning, where people are going to, it's like, hey, I'll show you a house, right? But like, now we need to do this because you want that agency agreement, and buyers are not just going to sign a contract just to sign a contract, right? They want to see something behind it, like some sort of value. And I think agents are going to be the agents who are going to really master the relationship part, the consultation part, really making the client the focus of that relationship and their goals. Those are the people who are going to win. Period. No matter whatever the law is going to be.
Go ahead, Todd.
All right, so 95% of buyer's agents are going to take a significant pay cut because, in the end, I think, Brian, you nailed it, right? It's going to be just like a listing, right? Yes, you might have the person who only interviews one agent and picks that agent, but, you have all lost listings, even though you provided better service, you have better track record, better marketing, better negotiating skills, and you've lost a listing because someone else was willing to do it for 0.5% less. And I think that a buyer is going to view the value of a realtor lower than a seller does. And I think that the average, person who makes $60,000 a year, who's buying a house, or $100,000 a year, who's buying a house, who sees that you sell one house and it's 10 to 30% of what they make in a year for your one transaction, all of a sudden now is going to be seeing that up front. It's one thing if they see it on the settlement statement at the end, but it's going to be big news. People are going to hear about it, and a sophisticated buyer is going to want a deal. They already want a deal, but you have the ability now to say you're not paying for it, the seller is. And it's really what we deal with in lending, all the time. The best thing for us ever in lending was the Dodd-Frank Act and having regulation where at least it levels the playing field some for the companies that still follow the law with regards to compensation. So I think, unless Christian, where you're talking about, I can charge them X dollars for this, for the consultation fee and that, if all of those things add up to 3% in a transaction, then you can make the same amount of money. But I think if those things don't add up to 3% of the transaction, then right there you're showing that the likelihood of making the same amount of money on a buyer transaction is getting diminished.
Well, I think one of the reasons I like because I've thought about this quite a bit, is I like the idea because that doesn't need to be on a per transaction basis, right? How many times do you do buyer's consultation or do any type of consultation and never get a deal, right? So if you're making $500 a buyer's consultation or whatever, how many buyer's consultations do you typically have to do a deal, right? So you're spreading that out over a long period of time. And then those people that do choose to work with you, I think the bigger picture for teams, which is I think the elephant in the room that we're not addressing, is if this really goes this direction more than like what Eli's suggesting, which is also what I think will actually happen. I would imagine half of the agents get out of the business immediately, if not more. And they're all team agents are gone for sure. The 80%.
I think maybe teams will grow. I think good teams will grow, but Christian, it's going to be harder for a normal agent to see, like, not only, first of all, it's hard now, but imagine they trying to sell a consultation, like whatever the amount is, like, hey, pay me $500 to meet with me for an hour. Right. That's even harder because like that becomes like, especially the average agent who does like.
Yeah, what I'm suggesting is from a company perspective, think Redfin. From a company perspective, the company will facilitate the interview, and like if you call the random attorney office, you're either calling an attorney, right, which would be like calling Eric because he's your guy, or you'd call a company that has a good track record of doing good business, and then you get whoever the hell they give you. That I think would be how teams would structure that. But I mean, what I was getting at was like teams are going to have to find money elsewhere, right? I mean, the initial thing that I was thinking was, well, if this happens, we need to open a mortgage company immediately, because that's where all the money already is and is going. If you're going to make less money on the real estate deal on top of all this other stuff, I mean, what other choices are you really going to have?
So I agree. I think the question becomes like, all right, here's the thing: is if this is going to happen and we're making less money, right? That means like teams, organizations are going to start thinking about their bottom line, the net profits that they're bringing in, right? So that you figure out like, how can I continue to scale, right? So operationally, it's going to be very important for you to maximize, right? So you start thinking, okay, can I continue to grow, to do more business? Can I continue to add more services while keeping the costs down, right? While taking more in. And now, at the same time, I think that this becomes a problem for brokerages, right, who are offering, high fees, right, to be part of them. I think agents are going to start thinking like, well, I don't want to be part of a brokerage who's taking 10, 20% from my think, right? Unless they're offering, the whole shebang, right? Unless all you have to do is do this. And I think that that's that move as well. It's like, all right, the value that the consumer is getting, and then the value that the agent is going to be getting from their brokerage. I think that's going to be very important to watch, right? And then do we see a comeback, right? I know we have not seen this with the Redfin model where you get a 1% rebate if you're a buyer, right? From the seller. Is that something that we see coming back? But in order for that, I think we need to start seeing the transactions start happening more, right? Because remember, like, we don't have enough transactions right now for a lot of those brokerages to stay afloat, right? And I think they're still doing it, Redfin, like, but a lot of them are not doing it, right? So like, do you see some of those things where you say like, hey, we offer all of these benefits, right? And then we'll give you some sort of rebate, and maybe not on the commission, but rebate on some other features. Like, if you work with us, you part of us, you get like, I don't know, guys, a whole year of internet and security alarm services, or we remove some of your lending fees, right? We get you your premium reduction, or 1 year of your car and home insurance. Like, all those things now become a play, right? Because buyers are going to start to think like, I want to be part of a brand that I like, that I've heard like my friends using, right? They've had a great experience. Plus they're offering all these other benefits that most agents are not offering. I think that's where I think that, agents are they're going to start either setting themselves apart, or, as Christian was saying, like, have that additional source of income to come in for them to stay in business, to make sense of it, especially on the brokerage or team level.
Well, agents want to stay on teams where the splits are 70-30, 60-40, 50-50, right? Because if they're going to be competing and trying to be like, hey, I'll represent you on the buy side for 1 or 2%, because agents are anonymous with just cutting fees for no reason. Are they going to want to be at a team where it's like the splits are 70-30, 60-40, when they could just go to a brokerage where the fees are lower and save money?
Yeah, I think that's a great question, but remember now, obtaining a consumer and the consumer trust is harder, right? So now, it's like, would you rather get 30-40% of, and I think that we're probably going to see agent working for that much less, right? That's pretty much guaranteed, right? That consistency, right? I think we're going to start to see that. I think agents are going to want to be part of organization more than they're going to be part of like, hey, we'll give you 100%, but then you need to figure this on your own. Think about it. Like we have so many conversations here, that 1%, 2%, 5%, 10%, whatever it is. If the organization is not taking that to reinvest on the agents and the tools and all the trainings, all the stuff, like who's doing that? Right, then you won't be able to offer that to consumers, that service.
Scott, you're way too quiet in this.
Well, I'm cautiously quiet, right? Because I definitely want to learn. I've had too many conversations in the last 6 days. Like, I think when Tom pushed out a couple of emails, made a clip, I'm talking to agents who need to worry about selling a house now, not worry about selling a house in January. And that's been my message to them. But that's happened twice this week from agents that I do not talk to on a regular basis. They're not in my space. They're just like, hey, things. Tell me what's going to happen. I'm like, how many deals do you have in escrow right now? And they're like, none. I'm like, go get 3 deals and I'll tell you what to do. Because that's what's important. So I try and be very cautiously optimistic. Then I got a call from a coach that I talk to on a regular basis at 9:00 at night, my time, 11:00 at night, his time. And he wants to talk about the different ways that he can coach his agents and his brokerage where he can leverage the money, right? It's an interesting way that so many people are looking at it. So that's why I'm cautiously quiet, because I don't want to come in and just barf a bunch of negative what ifs until we really know. I mean, the court's in October, right? And it's in everybody's best interest to settle before it gets to court. It's going to be, I think that the person who's going to lose the most in this isn't the real estate agent. I think it's the consumer. I think best intentions are going to hurt them. And it's going to hurt the consumers that can't afford the right representation, right? It's expensive to be poor already. Now you're going to be a first-time home buyer, and you need that money for your inspection. You need that money for your down. So you can't afford the best representation, and you're going to look online or get a predatory VA phone call, ISA phone call from out of the country from just some kind of puppy mill for real estate agents who's going to write this half-ass contract for $650 because that's all you can afford as a first-time home buyer. That's my biggest concern.
So to that point, Scott, or just everyone, right? Because I have my thoughts on, like, we could talk about what could happen or, the future of the industry. How can we prep, if you're a team owner, brokerage, how can you start prepping agents now to start getting ready for that time, whether it happens or not? Because if it doesn't happen, great. Everyone just got better, right? So I have some thoughts on how to work on it, but what are you guys going to start teaching or coaching to?
What I coached yesterday, because again, it came up with one of my ATLs. He was all hot and bothered about it. I'm like, do you want to get ready for it? And he's like, yeah, I want to be way ahead of it, right? I'm like, great. How many buyer brokers did your agents get signed this week? Just a simple buyer broker that says, I will get paid what the MLS says I should get paid. Get them comfortable with handling the document before. And I don't want to be hypocritical here. I've never been a fan of trying to get the buyer broker signed beforehand, but now I'm a coach and it's my best interest to coach my clients. Getting your agents over the uncomfortable conversation with buyers and saying, here's an agreement that says I'm as committed to you as you are to me. And then learning all the objections that are going to come through it and getting told to go pound sand 1,000 times between now and whenever something actually happens. So at least they've got 1,000 go pound sands more than the next agent next to them. And second step is making sure that every agent on the team has a real and honest 30-second value proposition. I'm not talking about a commercial that they can riff off. What I'm talking about is making sure that they have talking points, because when you're at a barbecue and somebody says, what do you do? And you say, oh, I'm in real estate. I help people buy and sell homes. Oh, my brother does that. Half the time, that person is asking you what makes you better than my brother. The other half, they're trying to find some kind of mutual connection, of course. But the real question is what separates you from the agent that you're sitting to the left or the agent that's sitting to the right? It doesn't have to be negative on them. It has to be positive on you as an agent. And it can't be I'm available 24 fucking hours. Sorry. I was trying to do good.
Or I'm free for you, or I'm free.
Yeah, I'm free. I don't cut, in the mastermind that I run for our level 2 through 4s, right? That small group. I pick 3 people at random every time we sit down. Somebody tell me how the market is without telling me it's good. And somebody tell me what makes you better than the agent to the left of you without saying you're available 24/7. Because we need to be hitting the agents with that, because that's what's going to go along with that piece of paper. So I really believe that those are the first 2 steps. Sean, you've got ideas. I'm curious to hear.
Well, I think Christian was going to say some stuff.
Yeah.
No, go for it.
I think it's a couple of things, right? I think right now getting the buyer broker, getting comfortable with that, right? That would be step 1. I think, and Christian and Eli will love this, social media. I think you just have to be out there providing value. Like I don't want to say pitching now, but like, why are you so valuable as an agent? Talking about the process, talking about this, where eventually your sphere is going to want to use you because it seems like or if we become a model where Christian is saying where they want to just do buyer consultations, they're going to go to the person they're seeing that's providing the most value. So I would say start there with getting on social media. The other part would be, and I think as real estate agents gotten away with this, is sharpening their sales skills, right? Not to try to sell people, but how to have conversations, how to ask questions, how to really show your value. So I think part of that is getting better at sales. And then third is, okay, got to start looking for some listings, right? How are some ways to leverage to get more listings? Because that is not changing on the listing side. So can you get more listings and can you provide more value? So those be like my things that I've been, that's what I'm talking to my team about right now.
So can I give you guys a case study from last night?
Yeah.
All right.
Well,
so
wait, Christian, Christian, did you have stuff you wanted to add, or anybody else before we move to a case study?
Yeah, I think on that note, at the end is listings aren't changing. I think the biggest opportunity for listings aren't changing is sellers are used to paying 5-6%. And that's for real estate agent commissions. I don't necessarily think, because in California, it's certainly not whatever the seller agrees to pay. It's not split 50-50. It's typically 60-40, right? If you get a 6% commission, it's 4 and 2 more often than it's 3.5, 2.5. So I see a huge opportunity there in our market for it to be a 5% listing commission all to the seller's agent.
I agree. I think I was going to think like it's going to affect that side too. And smart agents, they're going to take advantage of that. And I think that paying less doesn't mean that it's a good idea for a lot of consumers out there, especially if you're a buyer making the biggest investment in your life. I think people are going to wake up and they're going to think about they want the best, or they're not going to do it at all, in my opinion as well, right? And I can see Scott's blood boiling here in that people are not sharing 50-50 of their commission, but things are changing.
I would hunt them down and befriend their dog.
I sign all the documents. I would say 10% of the time is split evenly.
I would make their dog my best friend, and then their dog would not love them anymore.
And that's okay, right? That's okay. And I think that it's just going to come down to like, all right, I think we need to be smart about this, right? Like maybe it's better than you say like, I'm going to do 60-40, Mr. Seller, but this is what you're going to get from me from that. Because I'm going to put that money, right? I'm not just going to pocket that. I'm going to put that in giving you the service. I'm going to get your property staged. I'm going to do X, Y, Z, right? And I think that that's what we need to understand. And buyer agents out there who get upset because they see that they're not getting paid. They don't even know, for example, what comes and what went on to get that listing ready or get that listing, all the things, right? And I think they shouldn't be upset, especially if they're getting paid what they thought they were going to get paid, in my opinion, right? So I think that how the people run their businesses, and I get that everyone wants 50-50, but I think that times are changing. I think times are changing, and as agents, we need to start bringing more value. And lastly, as Shah was saying, I think that we're gonna, if this awareness become possible, where consumers are gonna be more aware of what's happening, you are gonna see more agents putting more value out there and starting to niche down more and creating those, loyal, consumers or audience out there just by giving the free stuff, right? So this way they become the word of mouth, and when they want to do something, the rewards like using, your services instead of going somewhere else. And we're starting to see it now, but I think that, you should be doing it now, but you're going to see it even more become more important down the road if that happens.
Sean, did you have something to say?
No, you're good. Let's hear the case study.
All right, here we go. So I don't know if you guys have seen lately, I've been pushing this house right here on the backdrop of my website for a while.
Cute little bungalow.
Yeah, it's pretty amazing. But hang on, let me get the Zoom went away. There you guys are. So stop the share. So here's what happened. Talking about value add for listings, right? I'm going to leverage everything I can to get the listing. I'm going to leverage everything inside that listing to get more buyers. That's the name of the game that we play inside of real estate. So a year and a half ago, this guy came to me and said, hey, I've got this house. And I was in the middle of investing at the time. And I was like really keyed up on trying to buy this house. He's a church friend. He's actually a pretty good guy. And he's got a homeschool of like 4 or 5 kids, and he needs the cash. So I told him, I said, look, I'm going to help you through this. The value add here is for me to help you step through the process of what it looks like to have a successful build, what people are going to care about, what people are not going to care about. And then you just follow the process until we list. And then when we list, you list it with me. We list it for 3%. And I get to leverage everything I've got into this house. So cut to 2 days ago or a day ago, it went live. Before it went live, obviously I went all in on live video, went on in ads. I created 3 ads last night. As of midnight to this morning, 300 people have registered on my site from that one house. Inside of that space, we've gotten, I don't know how, my team is making phone calls one after the other right now. That's all they're doing. My phone is blowing up right now asking me questions about the house from the team on one house. We've already gotten 2 offers over asking cash. Okay. What's interesting is that today there are no showings. Out of that much churn inside of the demand for that house, it tells me a couple of different things. The people that were serious put in offers with buyer's agents up front. And we have a open house Friday, Saturday, and Sunday to capture even more. So for the people that wrote cash offers over asking, they generally are demanding a response pretty quickly. And I don't blame them. But the narrative was, be honest with the agents. And this is where good buyer's agents come in. And I'm hoping that the industry goes in that direction, what we're talking about. I got to be very candid with him and say, hey guys, we got your offer. Thank you so much. We recognize it's over asking. We're super excited about that. You guys are in really good standing. Obviously, cash is king. Here's one thing I want to tell you, though. I've already spent a huge amount of budget spend for Friday, Saturday, and Sunday on getting this thing marketed so I could build my team with more potential opportunity to close more houses in the future. We just need more business out of this. We don't anticipate it going for much more, but if it does, I'll let you know and give you an at bat. Does that sound good? Every single one of like the 2 people said, no, that sounds great. I get that. That makes sense. We got 2 offers within 5 hours of it being on the market. So now I'm leveraging this with all of the 300 people that we got between midnight and this morning. We have a sellers class coming up. Rethink is hosting for, whatever class the team wants to do, right? There's all of these facets that we're going to take and then take to the next listing and go, this is what we do. This is part of the process for every single listing now. This is the value that I want to bring my people over and over and over. And if you guys are doing that, you guys are badasses because it's a lot of work. But to leverage my database into 300 entries in 6 hours, that's bonkers for us.
This is crazy for anybody. That's great.
You told the agents that were calling that you had a significant investment in the weekend. Who did you,
No, the 2 people that wrote the offers that were expecting an answer, I told them, do me a favor, just hold out till Sunday because we've already put our ad spend through Sunday at 5.
Okay.
And they overwhelmingly were like, oh yeah, we get that. Totally cool.
They bought that?
Yep, they got it. Well, it's me, Sean. It's me. Come on.
We're in the wrong market. Let's go to
I-
Fort
I-
Worth and get predatory, guys. Because
I think so. Like it would not work in our market either. But I was going to say like it happens with us often where we get offers within hours of not sight unseen cash offers, blah blah blah. Especially in certain markets where it's priced well, it's a great home. And for us, it's just following the process because like 99% of the time, we're going to get the sellers a better offer than the ones we got. It happens, even when I think like, wow, this is going to go more than I anticipated. A lot of the times, why we want to trust the process. And this is a conversation that we have with our sellers as well. Like here's 2 offers on hand, both over asking cash. You have to say like, by the way, I know this is tempting for you to see it, but we put a plan in place that is working, right? And, my suggestion, it would be to trust the process. And here's the data that I have for you to back it up. I have 300 people who signed up to get more information. I have, so many showings scheduled in my showings time that are going to come see it. Chances are is that we will be able to leverage these offers to get better ones or get these people to come up more, right? And if these are the right buyers for this house, they're not going to be gone, and if they're gone, right, in my opinion, they're not the right buyer to begin with, right? Because then they're making like, they're not as serious, they're flaky.
100%.
Eric's
So I
point.
think the hardest part with the agents is like, how do you have that conversation with the seller? Because they're still triggered, they're tempted to take it. It's a great offer.
I think the point you're trying to make, Eric, is 98% of agents don't do any of the shit you just said.
Correct.
Yeah.
And the other point was, as an indication, the amount of demand for people that want to buy a house, they're not scheduling showings. They're just getting on the site and looking at pretty houses. So for the people that are extremely serious, are using agents writing contracts early. You see what I'm saying? And believe it or not, the 2 agents that came in are badasses. They knew how to send out the
I have a
email.
question.
Yeah.
So, sorry, it seems like there's a lag. My question: what was your magnet for that listing to get those 300 signups?
What was the what?
What was it like the magnet? What got them to what got them to sign up? Was it to access a virtual tour or?
Oh, it was learn more. It was learn more on
Learn
Facebook.
more.
Learn more on Facebook and Instagram.
And what was the tag or subject line? The hook?
We did 3 separate tags. One was vintage house. One was cozy, but blah, it was cutesy chat GPT topics.
Got it. And you say your team is actually and your team's like calling these people right now, right?
Yeah, they're calling. Yeah.
That's awesome. So the thing is, by the way, Eric, like this is great. And I think that, your listing checklist, let's say all the things you did, you put this in a checklist. This is what you should be doing every time. It may not work with every listing, obviously, but I think it's great because that's how you generate leads. But you can even do that without even having a listing. You can go out there and do really great ads on Facebook and Instagram that it's around your market that people are going to be interested and get 300, 500 signups.
100%. And to be honest with you, this was look, I had so much time invested in getting this to where it is, right? Helping my client, creating stories within that so I can video those later, right? What I'm doing to help this guy make $250 in profit for his family to go get a homestead so they can homeschool their kids. They couldn't all fit in this house, but they knew when they bought it for X amount of money that they could make money. It's just all these stories that are stacking up that you can start leveraging. And you guys are saying all the time, you guys are doing videos, and Christian's the best at it. Stacking up on Sunday is my goal, is to like have 8 videos on Sunday or 12 videos on Sunday to do with legitimate, sincere, like no BS. Here's the market today. We went up 2%, none of that. Just the stories that go along. Like we were talking this with Shant the other day. What's the story? What's the problem? What are the interests I have? How does it relate to what I do for a living? Tell the story.
Eric, how many houses do you sell a year?
Last year, I think I sold 63.
So I would be really interested to see a marketing campaign for you specifically around like an email style newsletter, social media posts on your channel, and like your marketing, right? Not property marketing, but like your brand, if you will, to be around the story for the house that I sold this week. Right. So like if you were to say this and like talk more about the story of, the family or whatever and why they did it and all the crap, and put that in a blog and a newsletter and all that local area, I would imagine that the community would love that shit.
I agree. I think that would be great, and more of us should do that. And honestly, I think that for me it's like after shooting content, like especially the last year, the way I have been being consistent, there like the time where you go and like, oh shit, I can't wait to shoot 8 videos and I'm going to put my passion into it. Like that doesn't stay there all the time, right? There's going to be obviously better days and worse days. But what we need to understand is that is what's needed of you. That is what's necessary for you to do it. So if you're an agent out there, you gotta not thinking about like, do I enjoy doing these or do I sound this way? I think it's just needed for you. You gotta get those done, right? You gotta put you gotta get your marketing out there done for your properties, and making sure you're doing marketing around the communities that you serve for your brand and the services you offer and what separates you from everyone else.
I'm so glad this is recorded. Thank you. Appreciate that. Okay. So anyways, you get the idea. I think some of us are falling off here, but is there anything else? I've got about 23 minutes.
I have I know Eli, you said you would too, but I want to get a reaction and out of you guys. So you guys don't know who my broker is at all. This is actually ironic, Shant, with you still on here. This is good. I had a lunch with my broker yesterday, and it was with other community offices. We're an independent brokerage, but this would be like if they were to do franchises, we're like the franchises, right? Agent owned offices or whatever they call it. And the COO, who will likely at some point be taking over as the COO, was talking about their huge initiatives and asking questions and whatever. And I almost fell out of my chair at how unorganized and out of touch and just oblivious the things that are going to move the needle for this brokerage, which again, I said in the beginning, you guys don't know what brokerage I'm at. This is the 34th largest brokerage in the United States, and it's only in Southern California. Yeah, you can record this. The 33rd highest highest by volume, at least, is my home group. So this is a brokerage that does $6.5 billion a year, 6,800 transactions. And I literally almost fell out of my chair at my broker looking over at me and be like, "Oh, you have a mentor program? Tell me about that." And I'm like, "What? What do you mean?" And we were talking about recruiting. My brokerage that did 6,800 transactions last year. Sean, guess how many new to the business agents were recruited by the brokerage? 2,300 agents total.
This year?
Last year.
Last year, how many agents? You would have to have like 200-300.
Actively recruited? I say 45. Actively recruited 45.
Yeah, there's 2,300 agents at the brokerage. They recruited 67 agents last year that are new to the business. And I was half of them.
Close.
Wow.
So
I think we've brought on 67 agents this year.
Right. So like I'm sitting there and I'm thinking, Eric, you've said this before. I'm like, I'm not thinking big enough. If these guys are doing $6.5 billion in sales and 6,800 transactions, I'm like, I'm not thinking big enough.
So it's so funny you mentioned that, because I had the same conversation with Scott today during my coaching call. And like we're putting a plan in place that's going to help me with that vision a bit. But also, Christian, I just want to point this something out, right? And I know it's like, and I'm with you there, but just know that, they're in a different place. Like, I'm sure that organization was very different when they were going from 0 to 50, 50 to 100, 100 to 200, right? I think that recruiting was probably more top of mind, and leadership is different. There are different people in those positions that, probably were not there in the beginning, were here now. So like, that's why they're asking questions like that, because maybe during the time where, things were going great and there are 2,000 agents, right? They're not thinking about recruiting. They're just thinking about like, how do we steer the ship so we don't crash, right? So like, whatever it is, because I'm not part of those leadership meetings, but I think it's very different. And I think that that's where they probably are thinking like, you know what? Oh, there is a mentor program. Like maybe we need to revisit that, right? Or something like that. So I think that's a difference too that we need to pay attention. They're very complete different places.
They're not in the building stage. They're probably looking at how do we get 1% more margin, right?
Well, the big conversation, the reason for the meeting is they're trying to figure out how do they reverse the losing market share battle, because they've been number one in the marketplace for 34 years. Now they can't say that anymore.
Wow.
Ooh, that's so big. They're the big boy that are getting like everyone's going after, right? They're the Goliath in your market. That's gonna suck. I hope they're not late to the party.
It's crazy. But like, that's my point, is that's the, when we're talking about leadership and all these other things, like it was wild.
So I have a question for you. Like, what if you were that CEO of that company?
So
would you, yeah.
Yeah. I mean, if I was to look back, I've been with them for 4 years, right? So I'll look at that picture. Is First Team Real Estate is known in our market for selling more houses than anybody. Period. The end. Number one in the market for volume and sides. That's for 30, however many years. That's what they've known for. And the entire time that I've been here, they've been scraping and clawing and battling for luxury, and they're not luxury. If you looked at 98% of the transactions that the brokerage does, it's right at the median $1 million price point in Orange County. And they've spent all of their time, money, and resources on trying to attract luxury, make luxury, like they pay an ungodly amount of money for the Christie's affiliation, all of those different things. So they took here's the answer. I think they took their eye off the ball on their core competency, which is your normal agent, chasing the luxury agents. And the luxury agents have all started. This is also an interesting fact I learned yesterday. 9 out of the top 10 agents in Orange County started with our brokerage and then left. The only one that didn't start at our brokerage was Tim Smith in our market. So they do a really good job of building businesses for real estate agents, right? And then they started trying to shift to luxury and just totally dropped the ball on training, recruiting, and going after the middle of the road, not middle of the road agents, but like your median price points, trying to cater to the top 2 agents in the marketplace and try to keep them, when Compass just goes in and writes $1 million check and buys them.
I think, same story here, Christian, in my market. Like we had the same exact situation where Compass came in and did that, right? And I think that company lost huge market share because they got so big, it became more about, how do we keep our big producers happy, right? How do we keep the big producers happy? And then, the normal agent was like non-existent until you became like this producer for that company, right? And I think that, and unfortunately, I think that's it's like a size thing, right? Like when you become a certain size, when you're doing $6 billion in real estate volume and you have 2,000 agents, it's like, it becomes hard to maintain that size, right? So you need to have the right, you gotta have the right people in place. You gotta have the right everything in place. And I just don't know because I'm not there yet. And I don't know what it looks like. So
Scott will survive. That's fantastic.
Only the paranoid survive, man.
That's funny. I think sticking to your core competencies and figuring out like what you do really well and really focusing and continuing to do that, I think is super important overall in business. Because like, let me give it a totally different example from my previous career in the dealership business. I worked for a guy that he had 15 dealerships in Idaho, and then came out to California and opened one in California. Tons of money, really, really wealthy guy. And in the dealership business, you have a flooring line, which is your line of credit for your inventory, basically. And he had about a $50 million line of credit. And they got so distracted by bringing in high-end shit because they were in California that they overextended that credit line by about $25 million, almost put him not nearly in bankruptcy, but he had to write a $25 million check to not get shut down by Chase. The problem was they went back and looked like, okay, we've got 300 different types of motorhomes or whatever. Where does our actual profit come from? And it was right there in the middle in the normal $150,000 motorhomes. 80% of the profits came from 10% of the inventory. And they're over here buying this shit that made nobody any money, and it's out on the lot forever, right? So that, I mean, you can go back to over and over and over and over to that time and time again. You look at it with 8 real estate agents that are killer listing agents, killer buyers agents, or just killer real estate agents that all of a sudden start a team, dilute their focus, their business suffers, and their split focus of both things are suffering. I mean, we see that every single day.
Yeah, or a singular agent who's crushing, like in our market, they'll be crushing $400,000 to $800,000 homes, and then they're like, "Oh, I want to become a luxury agent, focus on $1 million, $2 million plus," and their business just nosedives. Right? I'm sure it's happened.
Happens all the time.
All seen that.
yeah, but even those guys who got that point, I don't think they said no to the other business. I think they just got really good about like honing into the client and really just, putting their brain on things that actually, it hits that, luxury market that they want to. But the other thing that I get from them is like the downfall from that is like there's business that they don't get because people think that they only do that type of business. Right. So like if you're focused on that let's say $4 million business only, and people that are at 800 are going to be like, you're not for me because you're doing ultra luxury for Philly. Right. Where I talk to those agents who do, they're not doing a lot of transactions, but they have a really good business. They tell me like, I'll take $800,000 all day long because, that $3 million, $4 million house or listing that's here, it may not even sell, and they can hold on to that for a year or two and they're not moving crickets, and you got to spend a lot of money in marketing, and you know, that could be gone. You know, you have no assurance that you can get the investment back again. So I think there's challenges there, and obviously it's very market specific, right? If I was in California, $4 million probably like chump change, right? It's like whatever. It's considered the norm. So
The mortgage world is not prepared. That's the one that stuck out with me today.
Right.
Guys, today was incredible for being able to be aware of all the different facets, from being an agent to be a team owner to even being a lender and an owner of a lending company, to see the inside of what kind of impact we're going to have on the industry if the buyer representation changes. The good thing is there's an out. You're always going to have the ability to come to scale and discuss the things that we can skirt around to provide value for our clients. Hope you enjoyed this. Take care.